The morning began like any other for Emily. The smell of freshly ground coffee beans filled the little cafe where she worked, mixing with the sweet scent of warm muffins and buttery croissants. The place wasn't fancy, but it had charm. Soft jazz played in the background, the windows fogged slightly from the heat inside meeting the cool drizzle falling outside. Emily tied her apron a little tighter around her waist and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She had been working here for almost 2 years, balancing long shifts with her college classes, and though it was tiring, she always found herself smiling as soon as she stepped into the cafe. The cafe was small, lined with wooden tables and cushioned chairs that had been worn in by regular customers. Locals loved it, elderly couples who came for morning tea, students with their laptops, and office workers rushing in for their daily caffeine fix. Emily knew most of them by name. She always believed a warm smile and a kind word could brighten anyone's day, even if only for a moment. That particular day was gray and rainy. Drops of water slid down the wide glass windows, distorting the view of the busy street outside. People hurried past with umbrellas, their coats pulled tight against the wind. Inside, however, it felt cozy. Steam rose from the mugs Emily carried as she delivered orders, her steps quick but graceful as she moved between tables. By mid-afternoon, the rush had slowed. A few people lingered with their books or laptops, and the hum of quiet conversations filled the space. Emily was wiping down a counter when the bell above the door jingled. She looked up, expecting another regular, but instead, a tall man stepped inside, holding the hand of a little girl who looked no older than 6. The man seemed slightly out of place. His jacket was simple but looked expensive, though it was damp from the rain. His hair was tousled, as if he had been rushing, and there was something in his expression that caught Emily's attention. He looked lost, not just in the way someone searches for an empty table, but as if his mind was far away, weighed down by something invisible. His daughter clung to his side, her small face peeking out shyly from under the hood of her raincoat. Emily's natural instinct was to welcome them with warmth. She stepped forward, smiling softly. "Hi there. Would you like a table for 2?" The man glanced around, almost uncertain, before nodding. "Yes, please. Somewhere quiet, if that's all right." His voice was deep but gentle, carrying a hint of exhaustion. Emily led them to a small table in the corner, near the window where the rain tapped softly against the glass. She placed menus in front of them and crouched down slightly so she was at eye level with the little girl. "And what's your name, sweetheart?" she asked kindly. The girl hesitated, glancing up at her father, who gave an encouraging nod. "Lily," she whispered. "That's a beautiful name," Emily said warmly. "I'll bring you something to draw on while you wait, okay?" Lily's eyes brightened just a little, and Emily felt her heart melt. She could tell the little one was shy, maybe even tired from the day, but there was sweetness in her gaze. Emily hurried back to the counter, picked up a stack of coloring sheets they usually kept for kids, along with a handful of crayons, and brought them over. She set them gently on the table. "Here you go, Lily. You can draw anything you like." The little girl looked up with a tiny smile, and for the first time since walking in, the man's face softened too. He gave Emily a grateful nod. "Thank you," he said quietly, almost as though he didn't want to draw attention. "You're welcome," Emily replied with a reassuring smile. "Can I get you something warm? Maybe hot chocolate for her, coffee or tea for you?" The man glanced at his daughter, who was already reaching for the crayons. "Hot chocolate sounds good. And just a coffee for me. Black." "Coming right up," Emily said, jotting down the order before heading to the counter. As she prepared the drinks, she couldn't help but glance back at the table. The man sat quietly, watching his daughter as she scribbled colorful shapes across the page. There was a tenderness in his eyes, though it was shaded by something heavier, weariness, maybe even loneliness. Emily wondered about his story. Most dads she saw in the cafe came in with mothers or grandparents or in groups. Rarely alone, and rarely looking so unsettled. She brought the drinks over carefully, setting the steaming mugs on the table. "One hot chocolate for the artist," she said cheerfully, sliding the cup toward Lily, who giggled softly at the title, "and one coffee for Dad." The man gave a small chuckle, the first sound of lightness she had heard from him. "You're very kind." "Thank you again." "It's my job," Emily replied with a shrug, though her tone carried genuine warmth. "But I like making people feel comfortable. Especially on a rainy day." For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Emily noticed how tired he seemed, like someone who had been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders for too long. But he quickly looked away, focusing again on his daughter. The cafe's calm atmosphere wrapped around them. Customers came and went, but Emily kept an eye on the corner table. She noticed how the man gently helped his daughter hold the crayon when she struggled, how he listened patiently to her soft voice when she explained her drawings. Yet, he also seemed distracted, pulling out his phone at times, staring at it as though reading a message he didn't want to reply to. Emily thought about approaching him, maybe asking if he needed anything else, but she hesitated. She didn't want to intrude. At the same time, something in her heart nudged her, an instinct she had always trusted. He looked like someone who needed kindness, even if just a little. She finally walked over again, her tone casual. "Is everything all right? Do you need anything else?" The man looked up, startled for a moment, then gave a faint smile. "No, we're fine. More than fine. You've been very helpful." Emily noticed the way his daughter looked at him then, almost with admiration, as if she found comfort in knowing someone cared about her father as well. It was a small detail, but Emily caught it. Children noticed more than adults often gave them credit for. As Emily stepped back, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the man than met the eye. Something about the way he carried himself, the quiet dignity, the calm voice despite the tiredness, told her he wasn't an ordinary customer. But she dismissed the thought. To her, he was simply a dad doing his best, caught in the rain with his little girl, looking for a place to rest. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming steadily against the glass. The cafe lights glowed warmly, casting soft reflections across the tables. Emily continued her work, but every so often, her gaze returned to the corner, where a father and daughter shared a quiet moment together. She had no way of knowing then how much this simple encounter would change her life. To her, it was just another rainy day at the cafe, another chance to be kind to a stranger. But in reality, it was the beginning of a story that neither she nor the man could have ever expected. The cafe was calmer now. The sound of cups clinking and the low hum of voices blended with the steady rhythm of rain outside. Emily moved around the tables with her usual energy, but her eyes kept drifting back to the corner where the man and his daughter sat. Something about them tugged gently at her heart. She didn't know what it was exactly, but she couldn't ignore it. The little girl, Lily, had already filled half of her coloring page with bright shapes and lines. She was concentrating so hard that the tip of her tongue peeked out from between her lips. Her father sat across from her, his coffee growing cold, his phone lying face down on the table. He seemed restless, like he was trying to keep his mind from wandering somewhere else. Emily knew that look. It was the look of someone carrying worries they didn't want anyone else to see. As Emily walked past, she noticed Lily's crayon roll to the floor. Quickly, Emily bent down and picked it up, handing it back with a smile. "Here you go, artist. Don't let the colors escape." Lily giggled, her shyness slowly fading, and her father chuckled softly as well. "She really likes drawing," he said, his voice more relaxed this time. "She's good at it," Emily replied, glancing at the messy rainbow of lines on the paper. "Sometimes the best art isn't perfect, it's about having fun with it." She said it playfully, but she noticed the man's eyes soften as if her words meant more than she realized. Emily straightened up and hesitated for a moment. Would you like something to eat? We just baked fresh scones. They're warm and go really well with coffee. The man looked as though he was about to decline politely, but then Lily's small voice broke in. Daddy, can we? He looked at her for a moment, and his serious face melted into a gentle smile. Of course. 2 scones, please. Emily nodded happily. Coming right up. When she returned with the plate, she placed it carefully on the table. The golden scones were still warm, their buttery scent filling the air. Lily's eyes lit up, and she reached for one, breaking it in half before taking a bite. She let out a little sigh of delight, and even her father couldn't help but smile wider. Emily felt a quiet sense of joy watching them. She didn't know why, but moments like these simple, genuine moments always reminded her why she loved her job despite the long hours. She wasn't just serving food and drinks, she was part of people's days, their small stories. As she cleared another table nearby, she overheard bits of their conversation. Lily was telling her father about her school, about a girl she sat next to in class, and about how she wanted to learn how to bake cookies. Her father listened carefully, nodding at every detail, his focus entirely on her. But Emily also noticed the tired look in his eyes hadn't gone away. It was like he was forcing himself to stay present, pushing aside something heavier for the sake of his daughter. Emily decided to take a small chance. She walked back over, leaning slightly against the empty chair beside them. You two make a great team, she said warmly. I can tell she really looks up to you. The man blinked in surprise, as if the compliment caught him off guard. Thank you. I try my best. And you're doing great, Emily said, her voice steady. She didn't know why she said it, but she felt he needed to hear it. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then the man let out a small sigh, his shoulders easing just a little. It's not always easy, he admitted quietly, glancing at Lily, who was too busy with her scone to notice. But she's everything to me. Emily nodded, understanding more than she let on. She knew what it was like to feel the weight of responsibility, even if her life was different. Working 2 jobs, studying late at night, helping her younger brother with homework, it all left her tired, but she kept going because people depended on her. In that way, she could relate to the stranger sitting in her cafe. Kids don't need perfect, Emily said softly. They just need love. And she clearly has plenty of that. The man looked at her again, and this time there was gratitude in his eyes. He didn't say much, but his small nod spoke volumes. Emily excused herself politely, giving them space, but something in her heart felt lighter. She had seen fathers come and go, but rarely one so devoted, even through the exhaustion. It reminded her of her own dad, who had worked long hours just to keep food on the table. She could almost see the same quiet determination in this man. As the rain poured harder outside, more customers trickled in, shaking off umbrellas and stamping wet shoes. The cafe filled with chatter again, but Emily kept glancing at the corner. Lily had finished her scone and was now happily showing her father a new drawing, a house with a big tree and a smiling sun. He listened as though it was the most important story in the world. Emily felt her heart swell with admiration. She didn't know who this man was, what he did for a living, or why he seemed weighed down, but she knew one thing: he loved his daughter more than anything else. And that, to her, made him special. Before long, Lily spotted Emily again and waved shyly. Emily waved back, smiling. She walked over and leaned down toward the little girl. That's a beautiful picture. Is that your house? Lily nodded proudly. Yes. And that's Daddy. And that's me. She pointed to 2 stick figures holding hands under the big sun. Emily laughed softly. Looks like a happy home. The man looked at the picture too, and for a brief second, his expression grew distant, almost sad, but then he quickly smiled for Lily's sake. Emily noticed, but she didn't comment. Instead, she just said, "You're very lucky to have such a talented daughter." The girl beamed, and her father gave Emily another quiet nod of thanks. As the afternoon slipped into evening, the cafe lights grew warmer, glowing against the darkening sky outside. The man checked his watch and looked reluctant to leave, as though the cafe had given him a safe pause in his busy, complicated life. He stood up finally, helping Lily into her little coat. Emily walked over to clear the table, and the man looked at her with genuine kindness. "You've been very thoughtful today," he said. "I don't usually find places this welcoming." Emily smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We're glad you came in. Both of you." He seemed to hesitate for a moment, as if he wanted to say more, but then simply nodded. "Thank you." With Lily's small hand tucked in his, they walked toward the door. The bell chimed as they stepped out into the rain, the little girl skipping lightly beside her father. Emily watched them go, a small but warm feeling lingering in her chest. She didn't know why this family stood out so much to her. Maybe it was the man's quiet struggle, maybe the little girl's gentle innocence, or maybe just the way they had reminded her that kindness, small, everyday kindness, mattered more than people realized. Whatever it was, she felt she would remember them for a long time. What Emily didn't realize was that this was only the beginning. The man she had helped wasn't just an ordinary father trying to get through the day. Their paths had crossed for a reason, and soon, she would learn just how extraordinary he really was. The next few days passed quickly, and Emily found herself thinking about the man and his daughter more often than she expected. She didn't even know his name yet, but the memory of his tired eyes and Lily's shy smile kept replaying in her mind. Working at the cafe, she met dozens of people every day, but something about them had stayed with her. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon when the bell above the cafe door chimed again, and Emily looked up from wiping a table. To her surprise, it was the same man and his little girl. Her face lit up without her even realizing it. Lily held her father's hand tightly, her tiny boots making soft taps against the wooden floor. This time, both of them looked a little more at ease, as though the cafe had already become a safe place for them. Emily walked over with her usual warmth. "Welcome back. I'm so glad to see you again." Lily gave her a shy smile, and her father nodded politely. "Thank you." She asked if we could come here after school today. Emily knelt down a little so she was eye level with Lily. "Well, I'm very glad you did. Would you like another hot chocolate, Lily?" The girl's eyes brightened, and she nodded quickly. "Yes, please." Emily laughed gently. "Coming right up. And for you, sir." He paused for a moment, then answered, "Coffee." "Same as last time." His tone was calm, but there was a faint softness in his voice now, as though he trusted her a little more than before. Emily guided them back to their corner table, and as they sat down, she brought Lily some fresh coloring pages and crayons. This time, Lily seemed more comfortable, immediately opening the box and choosing a bright purple crayon. Emily noticed how her father watched her with quiet pride, even as the lines of fatigue were still etched on his face. When Emily returned with their drinks, she set them down carefully. "Here you go. One hot chocolate for the little artist and a coffee for Dad." "Thank you," he said, giving her a faint smile. "You're welcome," Emily replied. She hesitated for a moment, then asked gently, "Did you have a busy day?" He looked at her, as though surprised by the simple question. After a pause, he nodded. "Yes. Very busy. But this is nice." Emily smiled, sensing that was all he wanted to share for now. She respected that. Not everyone wanted to talk about their burdens with a stranger. Still, she felt a quiet connection growing, as though they were both starting to understand each other without needing many words. As the cafe buzzed around them, Emily noticed Lily leaning closer to her father, showing him the picture she was drawing. This one was of a tall building with windows and a small figure standing at the top. "This is you, Daddy," Lily explained in her soft voice. "You're up high because you're strong." Emily's heart melted at the sight. The man gave a small laugh, though his eyes looked thoughtful. "That's very sweet, Lily." Emily couldn't help but comment. "She really admires you." He looked at Emily then, his gaze lingering for a moment. "She's my world," he said simply, but the way he said it carried so much meaning. Emily nodded. She could feel the weight behind those words, the way they held both love and responsibility. She wondered again about his life, what he did, why he always looked so tired, why he seemed to carry something heavy that he never said out loud. As the afternoon went on, Emily found herself passing by their table more often, not because they needed anything, but because she enjoyed the calmness they brought with them. Unlike many customers who were in a rush, glued to their phones or impatient about service, this father and daughter took their time. They talked softly, laughed a little, and created a quiet pocket of peace in the busy cafe. At one point, Lily suddenly looked up at Emily and asked, "Do you like drawing too?" Emily chuckled. "I'm not very good at it, but I love baking. That's my kind of art." Lily's eyes widened. "What do you bake?" "Oh, all kinds of things," Emily said, smiling. "Cakes, cookies, bread. One day, I want to open my own bakery." Lily gasped in excitement. "Daddy, can we come if she opens a bakery?" Her father looked at Emily with a faint smile, the corner of his lips lifting. "I think we'd have to. She makes the best scones I've ever had." Emily laughed softly, a little embarrassed by the compliment, but also touched. It was rare for her to hear such genuine words from customers. She could feel her cheeks warm slightly, and she quickly excused herself to check on another table. But as she worked, her thoughts lingered. It felt different, the way he had said that. Not just polite, not just casual, it had been honest, like he truly meant it. The afternoon stretched on, and the rain outside turned into a soft drizzle. When it was finally time for them to leave, Lily carefully gathered her drawings, folding them neatly as if they were treasures. Her father stood, slipping his coat back on. He reached into his pocket, pulling out some cash to pay the bill, but he also placed something extra under the receipt before Emily could return. "Thank you again," he said as they prepared to leave. His eyes met Emily's, and for a brief moment, she saw something there: gratitude, maybe even a hint of relief. "You're always welcome here," Emily replied warmly. "Both of you." As they walked out, the bell chimed once more. Emily went to clear their table, and when she lifted the receipt, she froze. Along with the generous tip, there was a business card. Her eyes scanned the simple design. At the top was his name, Daniel Carter. Beneath it, the title, CEO, Carter Enterprises. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had heard of Carter Enterprises before, a huge company known for its influence in real estate and technology. Daniel Carter was not just a customer in her cafe. He was one of the city's most successful businessmen. She stood there for a moment, stunned. She replayed the last two visits in her mind: the tired man, the devoted father, the quiet moments with his daughter. He hadn't acted like someone powerful or wealthy. He had acted like a man simply trying to be a good dad. Emily slipped the card into her pocket, her thoughts spinning. She didn't know why he had left it for her. Was it just a polite gesture? A way of saying thank you? Or was it something more? As she finished cleaning the table, she couldn't help but smile softly to herself. To her, he wasn't just a CEO or a wealthy man. He was Daniel, the single father who loved his daughter deeply and who, despite his success, looked just as human and fragile as anyone else. That night, as Emily walked home under her umbrella, the streets glistening with rain, She thought about the unexpected connection that had formed. She didn't know where it would lead, but something told her this was only the beginning of a story that was far from ordinary. The cafe was busier than usual the next week. A sudden cold snap had brought people in from the chilly streets, looking for warmth and comfort in hot drinks and pastries. Emily worked quickly behind the counter, pouring steaming lattes, carrying plates of muffins, and greeting regular customers with her usual cheerful smile. She was tired, as always, but her heart felt light. Every day now, she wondered if Daniel and Lily would return. Their visits had become the brightest part of her week. That afternoon, just as the rush began to calm, the bell above the door jingled. Emily looked up, and there they were. Daniel walked in with Lily's small hand in his, her little backpack bouncing as she skipped beside him. This time, his face carried less strain, and his eyes seemed softer, as if the simple routine of visiting the cafe had given him a kind of peace. Emily's smile appeared instantly, as if it had been waiting for them. "Well, look who it is," she said playfully. "I was just thinking it had been too long since my favorite little artist visited me." Lily grinned shyly, her cheeks rosy from the cold, and Daniel chuckled under his breath. "She's been asking every day when we could come back," he admitted. Emily bent down toward Lily. "Did you bring your crayons again?" The girl nodded quickly, tugging a small case from her backpack. "I want to draw something new for you." "Then let's get you your hot chocolate fuel," Emily said, winking. She turned to Daniel. "And I'm guessing you'd like the usual too." He smiled faintly. "Yes. You remember well." Emily brought their drinks a few minutes later, along with 2 warm slices of banana bread fresh from the oven. "On the house," she said when Daniel tried to protest. "It's too cold outside not to have something sweet." They settled into their corner, and soon Lily was busy coloring while Emily moved around the cafe. But she found herself checking on them more than the other tables, drawn to the calm rhythm of their presence. It wasn't just kindness anymore, it was curiosity too. She wanted to know more about Daniel, about the man behind the tired eyes and quiet smile. Later, when the cafe emptied a little, Emily carried a tray past their table. Daniel looked up, and their eyes met. For some reason, she paused, then set the tray down and slid into the chair across from him. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said lightly. He shook his head. "Not at all." Emily glanced at Lily, who was humming softly as she colored. Then she leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. "I found the card you left last time." Daniel's hand froze slightly around his coffee cup. His expression stayed calm, but she noticed the flicker in his eyes. "I wondered if you would." "You're not just an ordinary customer," Emily said carefully, though her tone was gentle, not accusing. "You're Daniel Carter. Carter Enterprises." He sighed softly, leaning back in his chair. "So you've heard of me?" "Of course I have," Emily admitted. "You're in the news. You're the kind of person people say is always in a boardroom or flying across the world for meetings." She smiled faintly. "But that's not the person I've met here." Daniel looked at her quietly, studying her face as though weighing her words. Finally, he said, "That's why I left the card. I thought maybe you'd find out sooner or later. And I wanted you to know I wasn't hiding who I am." Emily tilted her head. "Why tell me at all? Most people would just enjoy the coffee and move on." He hesitated, then glanced at Lily, who was still happily coloring. His voice softened. "Because you were kind without knowing. You didn't care about my name, or my company, or how much money I have. You just helped." Emily felt her chest warm at his words. She shrugged lightly, though her smile was sincere. "I don't think kindness should depend on who someone is. A tired dad is still a tired dad, no matter what his job is." Daniel chuckled quietly at that, the sound genuine. "You're right. For a moment, silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. The rain outside tapped softly against the windows, and the cafe lights glowed warmly. Emily studied him, noticing how different he seemed from the powerful figure she had imagined when she read his card. There was no arrogance in him, only a kind of quiet strength mixed with weariness. She wanted to know more. Is it hard? Balancing everything, your work, being a dad? Daniel let out a long breath, as though the question had touched something deep inside him. Harder than I ever imagined, he admitted. After Lily's mother passed away, I thought I could handle everything: work, raising her, keeping life together. But some days, he shook his head slightly. Some days, I feel like I'm failing both as a father and as a leader. Emily's heart tightened. She hadn't expected him to share something so personal, but it made her see him in an even softer light. She spoke gently. You're not failing. I've seen the way she looks at you. She adores you. That means you're doing something right. Daniel's eyes softened, a faint glimmer of emotion showing before he looked down at his coffee. You say that so easily. Because it's true, Emily said simply. At that moment, Lily lifted her paper and held it out proudly. Look, Daddy. Look, Emily. On the page was a drawing of 3 stick figures, Lily in the middle, holding hands with her father on one side and Emily on the other. Above them, a big sun smiled down. Emily blinked in surprise, her cheeks warming. Oh, Lily, that's so sweet. Daniel looked at the picture, then at Emily. For a moment, his serious face softened into something unreadable, part surprise, part warmth. She doesn't draw strangers, he said quietly. Emily laughed gently, though her heart beat faster. Well, I feel honored. Lily beamed, sliding the paper across the table. You can keep this one too. Emily carefully folded the picture, her fingers lingering on the paper. She felt something shift inside her, a sense that she had stepped into their world in a way she hadn't expected. The rest of the visit passed in easy conversation. Daniel asked her about her studies, about her dream of owning a bakery. He listened intently, nodding as if every word mattered. Emily found herself speaking more openly than she usually did with customers. She told him about her late night studying, about her younger brother she helped take care of, about how sometimes it felt like her dreams were too far away. You'll get there, Daniel said firmly. People with your kind of heart always do. Emily smiled, touched by his confidence. She had no idea why his words meant so much, but they did. When it was finally time for them to leave, Daniel stood and helped Lily with her coat. He placed the money for their bill on the table, but no business card this time. Instead, as he gathered Lily's backpack, he said quietly, "Thank you for treating us like people, not names or headlines. That means more than you realize." Emily met his gaze, her voice steady. "You'll always be welcome here. Both of you." As they walked out into the chilly evening, Emily stood at the window for a moment, watching them go. She pressed a hand lightly to her apron pocket, where Lily's new drawing rested. Somehow, this felt bigger than just cafe visits. Something was unfolding, slowly but surely, and she could feel it changing her life already. She didn't know what would happen next. But she knew one thing for certain: Daniel Carter, Millionaire CEO, wasn't just a powerful man in a headline anymore. To her, he was Daniel, the devoted father, the quiet soul, the man who, without even trying, had stepped into her world in the most unexpected way. The days grew shorter as autumn slipped quietly toward winter. The cafe stayed busy with people escaping the cold, and Emily found herself working longer hours. Yet no matter how tired she felt, she always had a little extra spark of energy whenever Daniel and Lily walked through the door. Their visits had become something she looked forward to, something that made her routine feel brighter. One evening, just as the cafe was about to close, the bell above the door chimed again. Emily looked up, expecting a last-minute customer, and her face lit up when she saw Daniel and Lily. They looked colder than usual, their cheeks pink from the wind, but both smiled at the sight of the warm cafe. "You're here late," Emily said as they walked to their usual corner. "What can I get you this time?" "Hot chocolate," Lily said without hesitation, her little hands rubbing together for warmth. "And coffee," Daniel added with a faint smile. Emily hurried to prepare their drinks, bringing them over with a plate of chocolate chip cookies. "These just came out of the oven. Perfect for a chilly night." Lily's eyes widened as she reached for one. "Thank you." Daniel looked at Emily, his gaze lingering longer than usual. "You always go out of your way for us." Emily shrugged lightly, though her heart warmed at his words. "That's what friends do, don't they?" The word friends seemed to surprise him for a moment, but then his expression softened. "Yes. Friends." They settled in as the cafe grew quieter. Only one or two other customers remained, and soon, it was just the three of them in the cozy space. Lily was happily nibbling her cookie and drawing another picture, leaving Emily and Daniel in rare stillness together. Emily glanced at him thoughtfully. "Do you ever get tired of it?" Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Tired of what?" "Being, well, who you are. The CEO. The businessman everyone expects you to be." He leaned back in his chair, considering the question. His voice was quiet when he answered. "All the time. People see the title, the money, the company. They don't see the person. They don't see that I'm just a father trying to raise his daughter. That's why I like coming here. With you, it's different. You don't treat me like a headline. You just treat me like Daniel." Emily's heart fluttered at his honesty. "Because that's who you are. Not just a CEO. Not just some name on a business card. You're Daniel, and you're Lily's dad. That's what matters." He looked at her for a long moment, something unspoken in his gaze. It wasn't grand or dramatic, it was quiet, steady, but full of meaning. Lily suddenly interrupted, holding up her paper. "Look. It's the cafe. And that's you, Emily." Emily leaned in to see the drawing. On the page was a picture of the cafe, with herself behind the counter, Daniel sitting at a table, and Lily beside him with a big smile. "That's wonderful," Emily said warmly. "You're getting better every time." Lily grinned proudly. "Because I'm happy here." Daniel's eyes softened at his daughter's words. He turned back to Emily. "She's right. This place has become more than a cafe for us." Emily felt a lump in her throat. She hadn't realized how much the cafe had come to mean to them too. It wasn't just a stop for coffee and hot chocolate, it was a little piece of comfort in their busy lives. As the night wore on, Emily began wiping down tables and stacking chairs, preparing to close. Daniel stood and walked over to the counter. "Do you need help?" Emily blinked, surprised. "Help? You don't need to do that." He smiled faintly. "I know I don't need to. But I want to." She hesitated, then laughed softly. "All right. You can stack the chairs." They worked together quietly, moving around each other easily. Emily noticed how natural it felt, as though they had been doing this for years. Lily, meanwhile, sat at the counter munching her last cookie, swinging her little legs happily. When everything was finally clean and ready for the morning, Emily turned off the cafe lights, leaving only the warm glow of the lamps near the window. She looked at Daniel, standing there with his coat over his arm, and felt an unexpected sense of closeness. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something, his business card again. But this time, he turned it over and wrote something on the back before handing it to her. Emily looked at it. His phone number. She glanced up at him, her brows raised. "Are you sure?" Daniel nodded slowly. You've been there for us without asking for anything. If you ever need anything at all, don't hesitate to call. And," he paused, his voice softening, "I'd like for us to stay in touch, outside of the cafe." Emily's fingers lingered on the card. Her heart beat faster, but she managed a small smile. "I'd like that too." Lily yawned, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, can we come again tomorrow?" Daniel chuckled, lifting her into his arms. "Maybe not tomorrow, sweetheart. But soon." Emily walked them to the door, the cold night air rushing in as Daniel stepped outside with Lily in his arms. He paused for a moment, looking back at her. "Good night, Emily. And thank you for everything." "Good night, Daniel." "Good night, Lily," she replied softly. The door closed behind them, and Emily stood for a long time, staring at the empty street. She felt something she couldn't quite explain: hope, warmth, maybe even the beginning of a new chapter in her life. From that night on, things changed. Daniel and Lily continued to visit the cafe, sometimes after school, sometimes on weekends. Their bond with Emily grew stronger with each visit. They laughed more, shared more stories, and little by little, the line between customer and friend began to blur. For Emily, it was more than she had ever expected. She had thought her life was ordinary: long shifts, late nights studying, simple dreams of opening a bakery. But a chance meeting on a rainy day had brought something extraordinary into her world. And for Daniel, it was a reminder that even with all the weight of his position, all the responsibilities and expectations, there were still people who saw him simply as a father, a man, a person worth knowing for who he truly was. Lily's drawings continued to fill Emily's corkboard behind the counter: pictures of cafes, bakeries, and sunny days. Each one was a small reminder of how much their lives had become connected. The story of a young waitress, a little girl, and a single father had begun quietly, with crayons and hot chocolate. But it had grown into something far deeper: a bond that none of them had expected, but all of them treasured. And as Emily looked toward her future, she no longer saw it as an impossible dream. With kindness, with courage, and with the support of the people who had unexpectedly walked into her life, she believed she could build something beautiful. The rainy day that had once seemed ordinary had turned into the beginning of a story she would never forget. And though she didn't know what tomorrow would bring, she knew one thing for certain: the kindness she had offered without expecting anything had changed everything for her, for Daniel, and for little Lily.